All right, friends. So welcome. This is the Myeloma Caregiver chapter event of the month, as well as a caregiver panel for this Myeloma Coach Summit. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Audrey Burton-Bethke. I'm the Myeloma Crowd Community Manager. We are going to do this event a little differently. Normally, I'm behind the screen, but obviously we're here live today in Park City, Utah. And I'm going to have my panelists introduce themselves. They're going to share a little about their myeloma story, since it's kind of a family story, and then a fun fact about themselves. So as we get started, let's listen to them and give them our respect and attention. Oh, you have a mic.
Oh, I have a mic.
Why am I
Right.
giving you
And
one?
I'm unmuted, right? I'm Barb Reinhardt. I come from Colorado Springs, Colorado. My myeloma journey started as a caregiver for my husband Steve in August of 2018. Of course, like everyone, that was a roller coaster and it upended our lives. I had just finished caregiving my mother, or was still in the midst of it, for 20 years. And when I found out that Steve had myeloma, and it was pretty serious, he was like 95% infiltrated at the time, and we didn't know if he was going to survive or not. I came home and I stomped my feet and I said, I just got done caregiving my mom, and now this. So it's been an interesting thing for me to learn how to manage this, to set boundaries, to learn how to support Steve in the way he needs, and what's good for me as well. So an interesting fact about myself is I do agility with my Danish-Swedish farm dog, Poe. I bought him in Sweden and went over to Sweden to pick him up.
My name is Marcia Calloway Campbell, and I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. And our myeloma journey started in January of 2017. I am the caregiver to my husband. At that time, we have 3 daughters, but 2 were in college in the middle of basketball season, college ball, in January in 2 different states. And my husband was rushed to the hospital and he's sick. And I had to try to figure out, I had a sophomore and a senior, how do I at least get to the seniors games? So it was just awful, but we're still standing. On the day he was diagnosed, he also became a dialysis patient and is still in dialysis. He had a stem cell transplant in 2018, which was successful. He's in remission. And if we can just get the dialysis graft right, we're good. So, fun fact, this is the important fact to me. I mentioned the 3 daughters, so I have raised 3 daughters. They're 24, 25, and 32. Finally, at age 60, I got my little boy. A year ago, my little Justice grandson was born, and we're all in the house together because the kids got stuck in COVID. So we're all there together, living happily ever after, and they're planning to move the first of the year.
Hi, I'm Michael Sage. I'm the caregiver for Mary Sage, my lovely wife. And where'd she go? Oh, there you are. No heckling. Our journey started 6 years ago, almost 6 years ago. Like others, it just turned your life upside down. Mary also, her first husband passed from cancer. She was a caregiver to him for 10 years. So I'm learning from one of the best here. And I have a couple fun facts. One is I'm not comfortable up here. I don't like to be up there. I'm a professional photographer, You give me a camera in front of my face, I can do anything. Take the camera away, I feel, wow. So, I'm doing the best I can, and this is a great group. Great group.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have each of you on this panel. It means a lot to me to be willing to speak. I did want to give a shout out to Kim, who was going to join us, but her and Bob Cisneros couldn't make it, unfortunately. Thank you, Marcia, for stepping in last minute. We're so happy to have you. So I prepared several questions. Well, several's kind of a stretch. I prepared a couple questions for this caregiver panel. I'm going to be asking questions, but I also want the audience to be thinking about the caregiver experience as well. Some of you are caregivers. I would say most of you are patients. And the reason why we're having this event is because the myeloma crowd, the Myeloma Coach, and the HealthTree programs really want to figure out what can we be doing more for the caregivers. We love our patients. We understand that they're going through something really traumatic, but it upends the whole family's life. And I think there is more that we as myeloma organizations can be doing for the caregivers. So that's why we're here today as patients and as myeloma organizations. What can we be doing more for the caregivers? So think of questions yourselves. We have people joining us from our virtual audience. You're welcome to ask questions. Katie will moderate those. And let's get started. So if the question speaks to you, raise your hand and we'll have you answer it, okay? Let's talk about what unmet needs you have in your role as a caregiver.
That was the only one that I didn't have an answer for, because I'm the type of person who will try to get that need met if I have one.
My unmet need is the personal one to me. I need help in how to loosen the reins. I drive my husband crazy, and I know I do. And I'm that one that's in charge of everything. And when he was diagnosed, he couldn't even lift his arms. He couldn't walk. He couldn't do anything. And I had to do it, so I stepped in. So now we're fast forward 4 years, 4.5, and thankfully he's back, okay, a lot of the way. So my unmet need is, Marcia, here's how you do this to let him be the independent man that he is and he was. Because when he tells me, oh, he grabs the car keys and I'm about to drive 30 minutes to a doctor's appointment, like without me, that's an issue for me. So it's more what I need versus, really what he needs right now.
Mary had a lot of experience with her first husband, and she is the type of person that really can advocate for herself, which takes a little burden off me, but she also needs to be reminded of certain things. She often talks about chemo brain and things like that, but we try to do this as a team, and she helps me, I help her. Works out pretty good so far.
That's great. I'm glad. And it really is a partnership. It takes two. I also know several caregivers who are the sons or daughters of myeloma patients. And unfortunately, we don't have that representation here on the panel. But if there is anybody in the audience, I'm sure that's a whole different dynamic as well. As you were saying, you just got done taking care of your mom, and now you're thrown into another caregiver role. It's a lot. What is something you wish others knew about your caregiver experience? And I'll kind of add to that question as well. What's something that we might not know from the outside?
For me, the right to have my own feelings and that those are valid, no matter what you may think I should be feeling. I don't need fixing. That's another one. I've had people try to encourage me when I didn't need encouraging and things were going pretty well. I think it that all could be summed up in the card that I picked up off the table today, and that is to have someone who will listen to me. I think that little credo can answer all of your questions for me. I need to be listened to and not be told how I should feel, what I should think, because I only and those are generally me.
Let me ask a personal follow-up question. Who do you feel is trying to tell you how to feel?
It has been friends who stopped by to quote unquote encourage me. Telephone calls I've gotten from like a spiritual friend who say, tell me that I should have a certain relationship with God through this. That I should be, that he's using this in my life. Well, I don't want that kind of a God. I want my God to love me and support me through this, not like a stick in a way that is forcing me to him. That's assuming that I'm not with him. So it's those kind of assumptions that people make, and I'm guilty of it too. I've been guilty of it, I'm sorry to say, thinking that I know how somebody should feel or think, and I know what's going to help you. But now that I'm on this end of it, I see how that's not really very helpful.
Marsha or Mike, any follow-up to that?
I'll say caregiving is exhausting, but it's rewarding. And if you're that person who likes to give anyway, and you're the nurturer and the person that takes care of other people, it is rewarding. You become that advocate, though. And I think one of the hard parts for me, I take that job so seriously. You know, when your patient goes to the hospital and they're about to leave and they do the discharge instructions, like we've been in the hospital so many times, now the nurses are like, Marsha, you know these instructions. But if the doctor tells me, Marsha, you have to watch for this, I take that seriously. And I'm watching for that. And if I see it, I'm saying something. So that's the exhausting part of it. But I think one thing that caregivers should know is that I have found, establish that relationship with that healthcare team. Let them know you by name, because they can make things happen for your patient. I have many examples. Some have given me their cell phone numbers, his nephrologist, his hematologist, and I can get to them. They tell me what to do, and that has been helpful.
To add to that, Mary's first cancer doctor is not the one we have now. We made that change early on because it was not a good fit. And you need to find somebody who, will listen to you. And we have a great doctor and a great team now. So.
Good. That makes me really happy. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes as caregivers, we're not necessarily afraid to advocate, but it's hard. That line is hard. I don't want the patient to feel inadequate, that I'm advocating for them instead of them advocating for themselves, but I also don't want needs to go unmet. And I don't want us to be in a situation just purely for comfort instead of for advocacy. So thank you for that. And thank you for your honest answers. I really appreciate that. Let's talk a little more positive. What has been helpful to you on your caregiver journey? What resources or what words of advice or what has been helpful, or programs, what has been helpful to you?
For me, having friends that will listen to me, that have suffered in some way, I find that they can relate and are all I need to do sometimes is vent. That's it. And so the people that can do that, I have a couple of friends who've come alongside and who will do that for me, who I can call when I'm in tears or I'm struggling, or who have said, let me drive you. We live in Colorado Springs, about an hour away from Denver. Let me drive you to Denver for that surgery that Steve's going to have. That was really helpful. And what has been really helpful to me is that my husband Steve has been really good about advocating for himself. He has such a positive attitude himself. Really, it makes my job as a caregiver a lot easier. And it actually affects how I approach this whole process, because I think if he were really negative, that would make my life a lot more challenging as his caregiver.
If I can just add to that, so my abuela, or my grandma, has vulvar cancer, and she is the most positive person in the world. It's so annoying because I did not get that from her. And so, we walk in there and she's just like, hey, nurses, hey, doctors, how are you? I'm doing great. I'm like, no, you're not. But I've seen it really make a difference for her and for our family, because instead of dreading every doctor's appointment, she's like, ooh, I can't wait to see that cute doctor so-and-so, and she just makes it, she helps ease the burden of it for our family. So I completely agree.
It really makes a difference.
For me, it has been my faith. God strengthens me, because a lot happened in a short amount of time. But also, it's the people around me. Sort of what Barbara was saying. So my 88-year-old mom was the caregiver to my dad, who had Alzheimer's. And so I kind of learned this from the best. So when my husband got sick, well, I was like, okay, I saw what my mom did with Pops. I'd do the same thing with my husband. So that has helped, as well as that circle of family and friends. Our 3 daughters, honestly, sometimes I have to say to them, you take care of Daddy. You deal with Daddy today. Our middle one, the one that was a senior when he got sick, graduated. She's a senior in college, graduated, came home to be the caregiver because I had to get back to work. I travel on business. So she's the secondary caregiver, and she can manage just like I can. So that was helpful, as well as family and friends, our neighbor. I can talk loud. They built ramps, to get the wheelchair up and down, just all kinds of things happen. One other thing I will say, as the caregiver, when somebody gets sick, whether it's your parent or your spouse, where there were 2 people making decisions about even household things, all of a sudden now it's you, and you don't want that patient to worry. So I promise you, he was diagnosed in January of 17. In our house, everything went wrong, from we needed a new roof to the garbage disposal. And I'm like, who's supposed to do this stuff? But I did. I reached out and I met a network of people, plumbers, electricians, the drywall guy, I know them all, that were able to come in and help me, because I did not want my husband to worry about anything but getting well. So that's how I've made it through.
It sounds like, I guess what you're saying is, you as the caregiver, you built your team.
I did.
And you went out beyond you and your husband and said, I'm going to do this job, but I can't do it alone, so I'm going to, that's really good.
And I viewed it as a job.
Mike?
Another interesting fact about us is that we live on an island in Puget Sound. About 10,000 people, only can get to it by a ferry, unless you want to swim. And it can be tough to get the logistics ready for, doctor appointments, going to work, because I'm still working and things like that. And I too, most of that, I have what we call on the island good fairy karma. If I'm running late, so is the boat usually. So I sneak in, and stuff like that. So we have a good faith community on the island. We have good friends. I can't tell you how many times I've run into somebody in the grocery store and they said the right thing. I need to be here.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I love that each of you mentioned the friends and people around you who do listen and who take the time to really tune in to what you need and to build your faith. Even if you aren't religious, those people who have your back no matter what. So I think that just is a testifier of the importance of building your team and growing your community and advocating for yourself and your loved ones. Just a couple more questions, and then let's open it up to the audience, both virtual and live here. I can find where I dropped it. Let's see. What resources would be most useful to you? So, we talked about the community is great to have around you, but more from, let's say, the foundation's point of view, what resources would be, or some unmet, what resources would be most useful to you in your caregiver role?
I think that you guys have started that with this chapter. That I've really enjoyed the ones that I've come to. I was part of a caregivers support group before, and all they did was talk about where the people that they were caregiving for were at. Well, we do that all the time. I wanted to talk about what was going on as a caregiver. So I think you guys have done a really good job of that. The one thing I think is not missing, but I missed it, is that you do have coaches for caregivers. I wasn't aware of that, and I looked for it, and I had a hard time finding it. So I think that would be one area that might be helpful, because especially early on when, you've got grieving going on, you need to talk to somebody, or I needed to talk to somebody who, I had friends, yes, and some family members, but also I went to a therapist who was a grief counselor, and that was really helpful. But I think that the coaches that you offer could also serve in that way.
Completely. And Maria is taking notes for us, so I'll make sure that we have that, because we want to make it as available and
I think
obvious.
It's a wonderful idea, because I have often thought, this is about the person going through the disease, but what about us out here? And there is almost always that. So that's a huge, huge thing.
Yeah.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you. You're not supposed to have favorite chapters. Just kidding. That's a mom joke. But Myeloma Caregivers is up there because we get real in that group. I think I cry every month. But it's such a beautiful chapter where we're able to just really talk about what we're going through. And it's really encouraging. But I agree, there are coaches for caregivers, and if we can make that more available, thank you for that feedback. What about you, Marcia?
One resource for me that HealthTree has provided is HealthTree University. That has been amazing. It's like I've kind of gone back and connected the dots of my husband's illness. And so that has been very helpful. The other resource has been the African American Facebook group. That page for me, I'll just say, my husband and I could not talk about what had happened because our little world just, it was down. We couldn't even talk about it for a couple of years. And so slowly, now we had the 3 daughters who were Googling everything in the first week. And I had to tell them, do not send me another link. Because when the oldest sent me what his life expectancy was based on, don't do it. So we didn't talk about it. We had to wrap our mind around it. We had to process it. We had to accept it. when we got, and then the Facebook page started, and I got on it first. And so then I told him, and then he got on it, I think, secretly. But now we're both on it, and we're talking. My next goal is to have him really think about clinical trials. That is a problem right now because, like many African Americans and possibly other people, that is like, no. So the resources, you have the resources that are helpful for me. And on those calls, I haven't been able to be on a lot of the caregiver calls, but when I have, just hearing other people's stories are just so helpful for me.
Side thing is that I get some great support at work, which is great. Work for King County Sheriff's Office in Western Washington, and my boss down up to the sheriff know about Mary, ask about Mary. It's just really nice, really great.
Wow, that is incredible.
Yeah.
To have that support.
Once they met Mary, they never forget it.
It's true.
That is.
All right, let's start taking questions from the audience. Everyone's okay with that?
Not necessarily a question. It's a story about a caregiver. We had a son diagnosed with cancer in 91. I was diagnosed in 2014. My son died at 98 of my multiple myeloma. I am doing well. I have written a book about the caregiver. Caregiver. Called Grandpa's Reflection. 21 grands, 9 greats, and counting. We now have 12 greats. None of them have cancer. We've never lost one. No multiple births. No deaths. No divorces. 62 years. 3 of these copies. I have ordered enough for 20 people. They have not arrived, but they're free. They're not for sale.
Thank you so much. Yeah, well, we'll include those in our raffle, Ross.
No, I have one for Diana. No, I have 3 others. And if the delivery comes, then that, if not, we'll have to figure out.
Okay. Thank you, Charles. Thank you so much. And Barbara, what a testament to you. And I'd like to hear from you later. I know I said I wouldn't do that, but I'm going to do it. Does anybody else do we have some questions from the audience?
One of our online attendees writes, oftentimes there are some negative side effects that might cause the patient to be more challenging to live with. How have you navigated these challenges when the patient can be overly critical?
That's a great question.
I'll be honest. We've had the worst, we've been married 43 years. We've had the worst knockdown, drag-out fights when Steve was on the 40 milligrams of death. Anyway, I've sort of, now he's on 5, and when he's a little bit snarky, I say to myself, it's the deck speaking. But when it has gotten bad, I leave the house, I go on a walk, take my dog on a walk, I go down to a field, and I cry. And I call friends if they can be reached, and I cry with them. That works. I need to be listened to. And then he knows, I mean, he doesn't want to be that way, and his communication has gotten so good and he's taught me a lot about communicating, so I try to incorporate those, but in the heat of the moment, it doesn't always work. So anyway, that's how I deal with it. I go out.
Thank you. And if any caregivers in the audience have answers to these questions, please feel free to raise your hand as well.
I'm not a caregiver, I'm a patient. A little trick on the decks was when I took my decks 40 milligrams on Wednesday, my wife would give me a list of what to clean out in the garage for Thursday.
And you would
She
do
sent
it?
me out of the house.
Oh, there you go. I don't know that I would have gotten away with that. So.
You know, the question is, how have I navigated it? I haven't. Still, I haven't. My husband is calm and cool, okay? But now sometimes, and I know he's in pain and we have dialysis and all kinds of things, but I'm on him like, did you eat today? Please don't pick up the baby. Would you stop? So I'm the nagging wife now. I already know. So he'll snap back at me now. And I'm like, whoa. Calm it down, but I'll cry for a minute, and I'm not even a crybaby, but I do. I go away, and that's when my kids step in, and I say, you make sure Daddy is okay today, because I've had to step away from it, but it is hard. But the thing is, he snapped at me, but a couple hours later, he's like, hey, Marsh, da-da-da-da-da. So it's like nothing ever happened, and we've been married 36 years, but dated 10 before we got married, so we've really been together 46 years. And so it all works out, but I do get my feelings hurt.
Mary is perfect, so.
She looks like it.
But if we had a problem, actually, the funny thing is, she was on decks for a little while, and I get up at 4 to get out the door at 5 to get the early boat. And when she was on deck, she would be up and have a breakfast from me.
Oh, nice.
And I kind of miss that. But usually what affects her, she gets really tired and she goes to bed. The dogs snuggle into her, and they're happy, she's happy. I'm happy too.
Can I add one thing? That is that I think knowing this is normal helps. And at one of the caregivers to HealthTree meetings I was at, people talked about how their struggles. And knowing that that's normal, it really helps me to know, okay, everybody goes through this, almost everybody. It sounds like you don't, but a lot of people do. And I've talked to other caregivers of other kinds of cancer, and just knowing what's normal seems to be helpful to them as well.
So listening to some of what you guys have said, especially about you know, talking to your friends or your friends who come around and ask how you're doing and whatnot. And maybe it's a guy-girl thing, but I don't feel like anybody ever asks my husband as the caregiver, how are you doing? They always ask him how I'm doing. And our friends, you know, I think they always focus on me, how I'm doing, how I'm feeling. I don't know if you guys have ever felt like I'm in this fight too, or
Yes.
someone that asks me.
Yeah, what am I, chopped liver?
Yeah.
Yeah, I have had that feeling and that thought that, because people invariably ask, they really want to know how Steve is doing. They want him to fare well. So, yeah, sometimes I feel that way, but.
And I wish that they would focus more on him or even on my children, because they're all adults, but well, they were all over 18, technically adults when I was diagnosed, but, you know, in college, and a lot of times I always felt as the patient, I knew what I could handle. And I knew I could handle anything. I, as a patient, was always worried about them as the caregiver, but I really didn't know how much they could handle, how much my husband could. All the financial burden was on him. I was on dialysis. Dialysis is very expensive. You don't know how you're going to pay for this in those first couple of months. And I worried more for them because I really didn't know what they could do. And as a patient, I would just assume keep it things to myself because I knew what I could handle. I was always more worried about my kids, my mom, and my husband. And I do, as you guys talk today, I thought, you know what, nobody ever asks my husband, how are you doing? They just say, how's Sherry doing?
I have to say, oh, go on.
Oh, well, I think self-care is the term. And Mary knows that when I tell I'll be gone for a minute, that usually means it could be an hour and a half. And she knows that I've taken the camera out and I'm what we call chasing the light. Sometimes I take pictures, sometimes I don't. But, you know, just when you need to do that, you do that. And she's a big girl and she knows how to get a hold of me.
My circle, I have to say, they have checked on me. And even his medical team will check on me because I think they saw how hard I go and how much I can do all things kind of attitude. And actually, my family is so happy I'm out here now. This is my vacation. This is, my middle one said, Mommy, go and act like you don't have a husband or kids. But still they text me, right? But yeah, people worry about me because I'm gonna do this thing and I'm gonna take care of everything, and that's another thing I have to work on for me. Yeah.
I think it's a male-female thing because I just think, you know, the man is supposed to be the provider, and my husband is doing that. Are you handling it okay?
Uh-oh. We're in trouble now.
What I've seen is you get your support from your work and your faith. And when you slip away, it's going up to church, you go up to talk to Father or anyone who's up there, and your presence is what they want to see. So knowing you're there. And we can't go anywhere. You can sneeze and get a phone call from the grocery store. How are you doing? So Michael is well known on the island, and he is somebody who he'll always talk about somebody else or something else. It's not inward. But his work gives him that. I think that your work gives him your source of resource.
But what can we do? I guess my question is, what can we do for those that are, I don't want to say being neglected, but those who are being overlooked? What can we do as patients, and what can we do as fellow caregivers to create more, we'll call it caregiver awareness? Yeah, visibility.
Yeah, I agree with the male part. Fewer friends and family or check on my husband caretaker. But I think it may be useful as a way to get them to go to the caregiver support group or to do those things if they understand that this is helpful for the patient. So it's not for you, it's so that you're better for your patient. Might be a way to get some of those people who are resistant to the touchy-feely or, who are stoic to be invited in.
I love that.
I think for me, for my husband, at first he was so afraid to be alone. But then he did get to know that he was burned out with him working and I think it's important that the resources for caregivers, because I know there is education at the LA, and that if given resources for the working caregivers, that should be shared with the caregivers so that they know that, my husband had a case a couple weeks up from mental health in himself, and I think that that's important that caregivers.
Well, I wish that one of you were my caregivers. You sound like wonderful caregivers. Any tips on trying to get your spouse to be more of a caregiver? And Yeah, I mean, I love my wife. We're currently in marriage counseling, and that's one of the issues with caregiving. And I mean, recently I had a real health scare, and she was there quite a bit and very supportive. But over my myeloma journey, 6 years going to the hematologist oncology every 30 days and going for treatments, she went to one. That was it, 6 years.
Wow.
And then, I had 2 stem cell transplants. I had to orchestrate the whole thing. I did it, at the same time, keeping up my salary through my disability, Medicare, grants. I like pulling my weight, doing all the stuff, and I love her. But she feels she needs to work, and I just wish there was a way to get her to get more involved. But maybe, I guess, I don't know, maybe I don't have the right to ask that. I don't know, but any tips would be appreciated.
Well, my heart goes out to you that you feel like you want more and you're not getting it. And this can be such a lonely place to be with your disease. But I don't know that you can expect something out of somebody who's not giving it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to your question. I'm sorry.
And everybody's different.
Yeah.
Some people hate hospitals, hate doctor visits. I don't know. It is a tough, it's a tough ask, really,
Yeah, I just want to give a quick answer to your question. Thank you for your vulnerability and your honesty. I have found in my marriage counseling as well that sometimes I have to lay it out and be like, this is the appointment that I would like you to go to, and this is the reason why I want you to go to it, and what can I do for you this week? Kind of just making sure they understand the why behind it and the specific ask. And once I feel like that has helped my husband and I understand each other more and therefore be more willing to do things for one another. It is hard. It's really hard. Anybody else?
The response method would be, would your wife ever consider participating in caregiver support group? Maybe it's, I would like you to do this for me, and this is how I will be helped by you doing it.
Yesterday, before we got on the airplane, I was out on a job site and was talking to an inspector who was a caregiver of his wife with pancreatic cancer, and he did, after going to the emergency room twice a month for the last 3 years, he was burdened. And I just wondered, for each of you, I'd love to know, as a caregiver, do you feel burdened?
I don't feel burdened. I hate what has happened, but what can I do? But again, it was kind of like my wifely instincts, maternal instincts, the need to be in charge of things just kicked in immediately. And I'm a problem solver. So it was never a burden. It was like, okay, this came up. Let's take care of that. Check the box. Okay, now we have to deal with this. Check the box. So I have never felt that it was a burden for me. And his attitude helps. Somebody was talking about positive attitude. He's positive most of the time. And that also helps just our household.
Except when he's snappy.
Except when he snaps at me.
I don't remember feeling that. If it happened, it was just a split second. And I remember being angry and things like, and of course, afraid. But, yeah, that's what I remember.
Well, and I'll have to be honest and say I was the one who stomped my foot at God when I came home from the hospital after taking care of my mom, and I was exhausted. Well, somebody here said the last time we were here, when we walked in yesterday, I thought Steve got a new wife. He looked different because I was so exhausted when he got diagnosed. And my mother was an extremely demanding person, a narcissist, a hypochondriac. She was not easy. And she was still alive when Steve was diagnosed. So it was like, no, this can't be. And so yes, I can say that I have felt that. And one way that I dealt with that is Steve has a wonderful family. He has a close-knit family. And there have been times when even I've had to say, no, they're not going to that appointment with us. I want to go. I'm the one who wants to go, and I don't want them to be there. So, in fact, when the doctor came in with the diagnosis, we had a whole room full of people, and the doctor said, are you sure you want all these people in here? So we've had a lot of support that way, and so he's closer to his dad as a result of having multiple myeloma, because his dad, who's now 90, decided he wanted to live longer so he could go with Steve to his infusion appointments before COVID. So that's fine with me, except when there was going to be an all-day one. I said, no, I want to be there for that. So I've been able to pick and choose, and that's really helped it not to be a burden for me.
Awesome, thank you.
So when you were asking about, how to get maybe more caregivers involved, whether it's through community support groups or whatever. So in my support group, at least once a year, we do breakout sessions. But obviously when we were meeting in person, we did breakout sessions where we had the caregivers in one room and the patients in the other. It was what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. My husband loved those meetings. He loved to meet with them, and he was the moderator, even though he was always behind the scenes with the support group. The support group was my thing. But when that came time, he enjoyed that. And I think it's a great way, whether you're meeting in person, and now if you're using Zoom, you can do breakouts, because we've done them. You can do breakouts, and the patients have a chance to vent with each other about you guys as the caregivers, and the caregivers have a chance to vent about us as your patients. And it all stays there. And even if you can't convince them to join a community just for caregivers, maybe if the local chapter, whether it's virtual or in person, if you can have those occasionally, I think it helps both sides.
Thank you, Sally.
Audrey, you said something that was very important. There are a lot of patients, probably even in this room, that don't have caregivers and or live alone. But you said you have to learn to ask. This has been the hardest thing in the 3 years that I've had multiple myeloma. I went through a stem cell transplant with 5 friends. They drove down to the City of Hope. They'd spend 2 days or 3 days and then go back, and I'd have another one. And we had, I had schedules for everybody, but that's either good or good. But I had to learn to ask. I had to learn to ask a friend, neighbor, I need a ramp. I can't get my wheelchair or my walker or my scooter or whatever I was in at that time down this one little 3-inch step so I could get out to my car. I had to learn to ask that, I can't make lunch today because I'm too tired to get up to the kitchen. So I think that's important for all of us, especially the type A's. We have to learn to ask. And I'm not quite there yet, but I'm working on it.
And to accept the help, right? Because sometimes help is offered and we're like, no, I can do it myself. Actually, I can't. Barbara, if you don't mind, I am going to call on you just to share your experience a little bit and what advice you would have for other caregivers. So I'm actually going to even go there in person, have you go there because I want them to see you on the camera. Okay. Is that okay, Mike?
That's fine. I'll sit next to you.
I'm not sure there's nothing to share other than I've been blessed with having 2 cancer patients and losing a son, and now having to take care of a husband. So this all happened in 1991 when I got a call from my son and he said, Mom, you got to go to university and we have to go to see Dr. Barley. Does anybody ever hear of Dr. Barley? I'm sure you have if you're a cancer patient. And I had other children at home. Luckily, there was people that stepped up to watch over them. And he and I had some blows. He was a very strong-willed child, very determined on what he was going to do and how he was going to do it. And he and I were constantly in battles. And when he called and said, Mom, you got to go to Little Rock, I almost fainted because I thought of anybody. He wouldn't ask me because of all the rows we've had over the past. And we went off to Little Rock, and of course, you all have heard of Dr. Barley, and Dr. Barley sat him down, and we tried to question him, and my son was very arrogant. And he put him in his place in a hurry, and it was a very good place for him to be. We went in, and Dr. Barley said, now, Wayne, you have to go into treatment. And that's what he did, but it was he and I in Little Rock, and the other kids some of the other ones were at home. And it was a good time, but it was a challenging time. He finally agreed that maybe Mom knew a little more than he did, but it took a long time. And that was in 1991. He was 31 when he died. Then he kept saying, Mom, what is multiple myeloma? And I said, well, you can read about it. You'll know. And this is what he would keep asking me at night when we lay down to go to sleep. What is it? He had 2 transplants before they thought he was better, and it was a challenging time. And for him to listen to a doctor was another challenging time. He wasn't about to think that he could listen to him. We have other children, of course, and that was he took priority over all of those. He died in 1998, and then in 2014, a physician called me and told me that he needed to see me, and that now my husband was diagnosed. I can't tell you what I felt. I thought, I can't do this again. It's too much, too overwhelming. But there he sits. And I'm very thankful that we are together yet. And we've lived a good life for both in our 80s and looking forward to the future.
Thank you so much for letting me put you on the spot there and for sharing your intimate story with us, because as we were mentioning earlier, it's in the sharing of these stories that we are validated as patients or as caregivers, and that's how we strengthen and create our community. So thank you to each of you who participated. It's really a pleasure to be the Myeloma Crowd Community Manager. It's wonderful. So, and thank you to our caregivers on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.